Mark Thacker is the president of Sales Acceleration, and he's a lecturer in the Entrepreneurship Program at Purdue University. He's also a well-known sales coach and sales executive leader in the Indianapolis area. He's an alum of the Butler MBA program. He's a husband, a father, and a grandfather. And Mark is also an author, as well as a person who is experienced in traveling the world and sharing his experiences. Welcome to the stage, our 10-minute headliner, Mark Thacker.
So about 4 years ago, I was at the end of a very, very long day. The day started at about 15,500 feet on the side of Mount Kilimanjaro. I had about an hour's sleep, and we were about ready to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. And it took about 8 hours and 10 minutes to get to the summit, which was about 19,431 feet. We know because when you get that high, you know exactly how many feet that is. It was about minus 40 wind chill factor. It was so steep you had to go through switchbacks. The switchbacks were so steep that as you went up, you could literally touch the person that was going the switchback above you. And we made it to the top. We was my wife and I. I was 50, she was 49 at the time. We made it to the top. They had warned us that if we were successful, that we would be nauseous, we would have a headache, we would likely throw up, and that was just part of the experience. So we did make it. We were there. We wanted to rejoice. We got a picture taken at the sign to say that you were at the top, and we wanted to spend some time up there because it had taken us 5.5 days to get to the top. But they said, we got to usher you down because you're not going to feel very well. And so we were heading down, which was going to take 9 hours and about 9,000 feet down. And again, having had an hour's sleep, and we set off at midnight to go down, so we were heading down the mountain. So we were about 7,000 feet down and about 7 hours into that. And so our guide, Haroon, and the assistant guide, Ima, asked us how we were feeling. And so he asked my wife, and our names were Mama and Daddy, which at first we took offense to, but because they were so young, and we were 50 and 49, and they were 23 and 25, which was about the age of our kids, we couldn't take offense because that was about the age. And so Ima said, Mama, how are you feeling? And she said, well, I'm pretty tired, and I'm about out of water, which when you're hiking that far, that's about the last thing you want to have happen. And she said, but I think I can go on because I don't know what the choice was at that point, what you would do. And he said, Daddy, how are you feeling? And I said, I'm feeling about the same. I'm also out of water, but we need to go on. So we continued to go down. At that point, there were people passing us, and we were passing people going down the mountain. And at some point, as we were looking down the mountain, we saw an animal or a figure, and we weren't sure which. And my wife and I were commenting that we saw something down in front of us. And as time continued on, we realized it was in fact a human being, and we couldn't figure out why we were seeing a human being coming up the mountain because everybody was going down the mountain. And at some point we realized not only was it a human being, but we in fact knew that human being, and that person was Edie. And Edie was part of our support team. And there were about 9 people that were supporting the 2 of us. And it takes that many people for the tents and the food and all the things just for 2 people. It's a bit humbling to think that it takes that many people to get 2 of us down, but it does, up and down. So as we saw who that was, we couldn't understand what was going on and why Edie was coming up the mountain. And we continued to go down, and we asked Haroon and Ima, what was going on, and they didn't answer us. And so as we went a little further down, we saw Edie. And we found out later that when we were struggling and weren't doing well, that evidently somehow they had radioed down and had told them that we were hurting and struggling and we were maybe not going to make it. And so they had sent Edie up the mountain. Now it's Kilimanjaro, it's the 4th highest mountain in the world, and so Edie had come up. Now Edie is really small, and I'm not exaggerating when I say how tall he is. I'm 5'11", my wife's 5'8", and we felt like giants around him. To give you some perspective on who Edie is, he was the person that every morning he would wake us up, and he had this little voice, and he would unzip the outer zipper of our tent, and we would unzip the inner zipper in the tent, and he would say, hello, hello. And I think he knew that word, and he knew coffee and tea, and my wife would get coffee and I would get tea, and he would crouch just right outside, and that was how we would wake up every morning, and it was very, very, very cold on the side of the mountain, and he would crouch there and he would make coffee and tea, and as he would serve us, he would go, ah, and he would smile really big, and so we just felt compelled every time to go, oh, Edie, and he would smile as we did that, and every morning that was the ritual. And then when we'd have dinner in this little tent that we'd have to kind of bend over, he would bring the food, and the food wasn't so good, but you're hungry, and he would serve us, and he would go, oh, and we go, oh, Edie, and this is what we would do. And so Edie came up, and so he brought lemonade, and he brought cookies, and I don't know if they were that good, but we were hurting and struggling, and they were really good lemonade and really good cookies. And so he poured the lemonade and gave us the cookies, and we went, ah, he went, ah, and he went, oh, Edie, like this, and just smile. And so we sat on this rock, and when you're 15 hours into a 17-hour day with an hour worth of sleep, and you've gone up that high and down, I mean, it was tremendous. And the way in which he served us was amazing. And I just couldn't get in my head that he came up that mountain and he was going to have to go back down as well, because we were hungry and thirsty. And the way he did it, and you might say that was his job, and I would tell you at some level perhaps that was his job, but I will tell you I saw his heart and I saw his eyes, and I will tell you he wasn't just doing his job, because you don't do it that spirit of servanthood and just do your job. I know that for a fact. And so after we were done, they asked us if we were okay, and we said yes, because it made a huge difference. And so he, in his own way, wanted to take my wife's backpack. Now the backpacks are heavy because you're taking a lot of stuff for every kind of weather and climate you can have. And so she, no, because my wife's 5'8", she's not big, but compared to Edie, she's a giant. And so she, no, and especially given what he had just done, but he wouldn't take no for an answer, so he just takes the backpack off of her back, and now he wants mine. And I'm like, well, now I'm massive compared to him. No, I won't do that. No, I'm fine. I'm not fine, but I'm going to tell him I'm fine, and so he walks down with us. And so I was amazed by that, and we get down at the end, and he was so pleased to help us, and through the whole week he was so pleased, and maybe we would have made it. I don't know. I would like to think we would have made it, but I don't know. We were really hurting, really struggling. And so I've thought about Edie, and so I built my business on networking the way that I think many of you have. And so I have many advisors across the country. That there's about 60 of us, and I teach each of them kind of networking and servanthood in the same way in building the business. And I thought about today, and I thought about Edie, and so I thought about all of us. And so sometimes we sit down and network, and we ask about each other's business, and we ask about how I can serve you and how I can help you. And I've done this too. And I think we mean it. I think we were interested. But I wonder sometimes, I've been in meetings and networking meetings where somebody's asking, but they can't wait to talk about themselves, or they're asking and then they're looking around me, or they're shaking hands, but they're not really interested in me. Or they're asking about me, but they can't wait to talk about themselves. And I wonder if we would network in a way where Edie would. Because if Edie were here and he were networking, and if he were networking around Indianapolis, Edie would network in a way that it was all about you. He wouldn't care about himself. He would ask about you, and he would find out what you needed. And then if he didn't get to himself, he wouldn't care, because he didn't show up caring about himself. He just cared about you, and he would serve you. And if he didn't get to his business, that'd be okay. And perhaps then, if we all did that, if we just focused on the other person entirely, and we thought, well, what would happen with my business? How would I network in such a way that my business was never talked about? I would challenge you and say, perhaps you would be different than everybody else that people would meet with. You'd be really different, wouldn't you? And perhaps somebody 4 years later, 8,000 miles away, would be talking about you to a group of people that you don't even know. And you'd be very, very different. because I still think of Edie, and I think about his heart and his smile. And there were a lot of people in that crew, and I can't remember their names. I have to look at a picture, and even the picture, I can't remember them. But I remember Edie, and I remember Edie's name, and I remember his heart, and I remember the smile. And so when you're out there networking, and you're out there serving, and you're out there asking, perhaps think about serving the way Edie does, and perhaps in your heart, do it in the way that you're like Edie would.